Shraddama, I have a question for you. Is there any preference on the Mangalacharan and the Jai Radha Madhav? Is there an exact order, or can I just do it as it works for me? I've never noticed that. Okay, let me just go ahead. Can you put the Mangalacharan? One, and then we will read that. Okay. Hare Krishna, welcome to our Wednesday evening Bhagavad Gita class. And we will be starting, as always, by offering our prayers to the ones who came before, the ones who guide us, and the ones who are always taking care of us, our acharyas, guru, the Vaishnavas, and Srila Prabhupada. So let's start with the Mangalacharan prayers. Om Ajnanathimirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Satvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So before we start, we have a standard prayer, and after that we sing the Jai Radha Madhav song. Once we finish that, we'll get started with the lecture for the day. So let's do the Jai Radha Madhav. Please forgive me if I'm off tune or not quite appropriate for the sound. So it's just me. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Gopijana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Vihari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Vihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Vihari Jayo Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Vihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunda Vihari. Thank you so much for coming to today's class. And today we will be doing the topic on the Bhagavad Gita. And when I was thinking about this topic, I thought that, many times we jump straight into the Gita. We choose a chapter, we do our chapter for the day, and we're done. But there's a beautiful jewel in the crown that's right in the beginning, and that is the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. And I really like the introduction because it's a complete book in itself and it carries the flavor of Srila Prabhupada. The introduction is a complete taste of the writer because he's not into a prescribed format, there's no Sanskrit verses in the text, translation. This is just him, nicely squeezed into beautiful juice. And he simplifies the Gita for us. He makes it much more understandable what's going to come and what is he covering. And so I was thinking, let's study the simple stuff sincerely. So this is a reintroduction, so reintroducing ourselves to the Bhagavad Gita. I will be covering as main points over the lecture today. One, about the writer. Well, it was spoken by the Lord, but it was written down for us and translated in English by Srila Prabhupada. So the writer, the book, the reason for that, the people in it, the reader of the book, and finally the contents. So breaking it down into these main points, let's first start with the writer, Srila Prabhupada. Now, as all of us know, Srila Prabhupada is an amazing individual. He came to the US in 1965 at a ripe old age with a suitcase, a trunk full of first canto Bhagavatams, a little bit of money that he couldn't use here because it was in rupees, and an umbrella and some clothes. And the story of his arrival here on the Jaladuta is legendary because it wasn't an easy journey. It took a toll on him and it revealed to him many deeper facets of his mission and strengthened him for what was to come ahead. So that in itself is a lecture, his arrival to the US. So we won't hold you there, but we'll look into that part of the story that connects to this book, the Bhagavad Gita. So Srila Prabhupada already wrote the Gita once. He had it in his heart for many, many years to make this translation happen, especially because it was the instruction of his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. And he wrote the whole book and it was stolen. Imagine writing 1,000 pages and having someone steal it. It's a very unusual thing to think about because it's never happened to me. But the very thought is very disheartening. But Srila Prabhupada doesn't understand the word disheartening. When you look at the way he's lived, he's all about keep going. His energy just keeps consuming every difficulty, every challenge in his path. And just, if you see the way he walks, that's the way he moves in his life and in the progress of his work. He's just so strong, steady, and consistent. He just keeps going. And when he lost the Gita, it must have been very difficult for him. But he kept going. And when he arrived here, he arrived with the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he came here and started his work on the Gita again. But Krishna's never done with you. So halfway through that, he lost all his equipment. Somebody broke into his room and stole his typewriter, his records. And he was back to square one. He had to start all over again. But he never gave up. Through all of the challenges, all of the difficulties, deep in his heart, Srila Prabhupada knew where he was going and he knew what he had to do. And giving us the Bhagavad Gita was one of his very important and primary steps. So he wrote it all again. And then he had to find a publisher. And there turned up Macmillan, who volunteered to print the Bhagavad Gita. It's an amazing story because they had no idea how they were going to print it. Prabhupada gave the transcript to Brahmananda, I think, and then he took it down and the Macmillan just immediately took it. They said, give us the transcript and we'll print it because we're waiting for a Gita. It's one of the books that is missing in our collection. And that's an amazing story to think that everything was just being set in motion. And even though they couldn't print it completely, they had to remove about 400 pages of other information that Prabhupada really didn't want it to go, but they had no choice. They had to print a simpler version. But they did it. And because they printed that, in 1968, the first version of the Bhagavad Gita came out. his version. And it had no illustrations, no explanations. But they never gave up. Having pushed through, Macmillan finally agreed to print the unabridged version again in 1972. And that is the original full version of the book that we use these days. It may have been upgraded with corrections and modifications, but that is the full thing. It has illustrations, explanations, and it is the unabridged Bhagavad Gita as it is. This Bhagavad Gita has been translated into 59 languages, and it is the most influential Gita in recent history because of the way it has been distributed and spread all over the world. So when we pick up a Bhagavad Gita, there's so much more to this book than just the content. There's a story behind how it came about and how much energy has gone into its making. But when you, as a general reader, pick up the Bhagavad Gita, another question arises, and that is, why this Gita? So Srila Prabhupada beautifully explains in his introduction, in his preface and introduction, he says, a woman asked me, and I explained, why would I take yours? There's so many out there, so many versions of the Gita. Actually, I checked online, and I was hoping, I was pretty confident that Srila Prabhupada's Gita would be top book number 1, but apparently there are 2 more Gitas out there that are selling like hotcakes. So I realized that never at any point in time is there going to be only one Gita version. There's going to be quite a few. And in that time too, when the Gita came out, there were quite a few. But Prabhupada was very insistent that his was the right one. And he had a few points. And if we consider that, we can also as preachers understand why it's so important that this book be distributed. So Prabhupada says that, first of all, this is the Bhagavad Gita as it is. It's in smaller print on the book, but it's just as valuable as the actual name because it specifies the intent of the writer. It is a Bhagavad Gita that has no added opinions or personal ideas. It is only the Gita that was spoken by Krishna, as he said it, in the spirit in which he said it. And Srila Prabhupada was very proud of that, the fact that this was directly given without any unnecessary hindrances that he felt. It has to be from the Lord as the Lord wanted it to be. What is the spirit of the Gita? The spirit of the Gita lies in the directions of the speaker. And here the speaker is Sri Krishna. And Sri Krishna, as we all know, is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is Bhagavan. And when Bhagavan speaks, there's no need for us to, clarify, modify, explain it any further. As we go on today, we will realize why that is so important. Bhagavan. We call any powerful person Bhagavan, even a demigod sometimes. But it is said in the scriptures, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Sita Goswami tells the rishis in Naimisharanya when he's speaking in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, he explains to them that, Ete chamsa kala pumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam Indrair Vyakulam Lokam Nidyanti Yuge Yuge. What does that mean? Basically, it means that there are many, many incarnations. But when you're searching this one incarnation, Krishna, he is the original one. He is Bhagavan, the one. And he is the original personality of Godhead. And he comes when the atheists cause disturbances to protect the theists. So an atheist, who is that? An atheist is a person who does not believe in God. And a theist is one who has full faith in God. So he comes to protect his devotees and to help them. And just as when a doctor gives you a prescription for a medicine, you don't ask him, are you a good doctor? Will your medicine work? No, right? We know he's qualified. He's a doctor. He's giving you the medicine. And we don't question him on the instructions that he's giving. Oh, you say that I should take 2 pills on Monday, 2 pills on Tuesday, take a break. Then again, I want to take only 1 a day. I think I'll change it. We don't do that to the doctor. So Prabhupada says you cannot do that to the Gita either, because the person who's given you this is fully qualified to give you this information. He is the Supreme Personality of God, and what he has to say has to be done the way he says it. So he says, we must follow his instructions as per his directions. We don't pick and choose. Just like a doctor who prescribes a medicine and we must stick to the dosage, the Bhagavad Gita must be taken as it is, in the form it is given, in the manner in which it is instructed. Another reason why you should take this Gita about other interpretations and modifications by other people is that this Gita is brought to you through disciplic succession. What is that? It is the process in which the acharyas pass down relevant scriptural information through a bona fide passage from guru to shishya or master to disciple in a way that retains and sustains the original information. It is always intact. When information is passed through disciplic succession, Vedic knowledge, when it's passed through that form, it stays intact. It is not modified or altered in any way, and therefore we can completely depend on it. It is an authorized version in Vedic sense. The acharyas of this process are authorized carriers of the science of Krishna consciousness, and because it is coming from a bona fide sampradaya, it can be trusted to be authentic and reliable. A bona fide parampara. It is authentic and reliable. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 4:1, Imam vivashvate yogam proktavanaham avyayam vivashvan manave praha manur ikshvaka vebhavit. So Krishna is explaining that this is not something that did not exist before. The instructions that he's giving in the Bhagavad Gita were always there. He had initially given them to Vivasvan, and then the sun god, and then from him it was passed on to Manu, his son, and then from Manu it was passed on to Ikshvaku, and in this way, the process of disciplic succession was started by him, Krishna. He is the original, the starting point of this line. He is the origin of this succession, and in the process of time, like most things, and time passes, this was lost. Yogo nashta parantapa. This process was lost. So he is now reviving it again by giving it to Arjuna. And in this explanation, we understand that how the line of disciplic succession sometimes gets lost in time, but Krishna, he returns to make sure that the people get the right information, the opportunity to grab the right knowledge. Sakalena mahata yogo nashta parantapa. So it had gone, and now I'm back to give it to you. So why, next point would be, why is Krishna speaking this Gita? What is the purpose of this instruction? Well, he had given it once and it was gone, and why should you give it again? I mean, the people were just careless and they lost it. Should you just leave it? No, Krishna is the most merciful. The avatar means to descend, and he comes every single time to help. Imagine if he didn't. And in each avatar, he comes for a certain purpose, to help a certain group, to help on a certain requirement, a certain circumstance. So Krishna comes back. He keeps giving us these opportunities. And this is another opportunity that he's giving us to hold on to this wonderful information, this very special information, and learn from it. So Krishna is speaking this Gita to restart the old parampara once again. And he wants to start it with Arjuna. He wants to re-establish a lost connection and to give the people another chance to truly follow the right process. When you follow the right process, it is very effective. And you do get a sincere chance to go back home, back to Godhead. And the Lord is trying to give us this one chance so that we can make the best of it and head back home. To know who we are, to know what we are, to know why we are here, what is our purpose in life, is such an important information. And this Gita is our key to unlock those secrets. And without it, we are truly lost. So Krishna makes sure that we get it back. But why did Krishna choose Arjuna? He had so many people. It was Dharmakshetra, Kurukshetra, so many people. There was Yudhishthira, there were so many others. But he specifically decided to give it to Arjuna. And he says, when he gives the reason, he says, 3 reasons. He says, Bhakto sime sakha cheti rahasyam etad uttamam. He is, first of all, a devotee. Also, he is his friend. And he has surrendered unto him as his disciple. So when we consider these 3 reasons a little more closely, we can understand what is the process. The first reason he gives is that he is a bhakta, a devotee. The Bhagavad Gita is especially important for devotees Because devotees need to know they are seekers of the truth. They are seekers of the path. They realize that the world that we live in doesn't make quite as much sense as we thought it did. And they realize there's something else there that they need to know. Another information, another world, another place that makes better sense. And since we are seekers and we are searching, the Gita is very, very relevant to us. So when you are a devotee, it is one qualification to receive this knowledge. The second point he says is that he is a sakha, a friend, that he has a real connection with the Lord. Once you become a devotee, you naturally develop a relationship. It happens side by side. A devotee has a relationship. Over time, this understanding of our relationship with Krishna matures. It could be a relationship of santiras, which is a calm, passive relationship. It could be dasyaras, where we serve the Lord in servitorship. It could be sakyaras, where we are his friend, his companion. Vatsalya, where Krishna becomes your child and you are parental in your affection. Or it could be madhurya, where it is conjugal, where you are a lover, a wife. And all these 5 types of relationships, we don't know which one we are till we get to a point where we've purified ourselves and we find our swarupa. Through the process of devotional service, every devotee gets a chance to purify themselves and get to the point of finding our perfect state, our swarupa, and through that, our swarupa siddhi. And when we get to that point where we recognize our swarupa and we get to swarupa siddhi, we will also know what is our deep relationship with Krishna. Here, Arjuna has sakhya, friendship. And because he says, you are my good friend and devotee, and you're asking me, you're a disciple, I will give you this. So he says, the third point, other than the fact that he's a sakha, is also that he's a shishya or a disciple. So he says, you have surrendered unto me. Bhagavad Gita 2:7. Shishyasteaham sadimam tvam prapannam. This is Arjuna saying, he is so perplexed. He's so lost. Imagine a man who has come with such deep confidence to fight a battle of which he knows right from wrong. He's aware of the consequences. He's very attuned to the situation. And he's come there to fight, and then suddenly everything crashes around him. What made sense a few minutes ago does not make sense, and his mind is like a whirlwind. He says, I see only calamity everywhere I look. What I'm going to do is not good, and I don't feel right. This is not working. Something, I can't understand. And in that point, he's so frustrated and he can't understand. He looks up to Krishna and says, he surrenders. He says, Shishyasteham, I am your disciple. Now you guide me. And that is a mood that Krishna appreciates. And because he is now a surrendered Shishya, he is perfectly qualified to receive these instructions. So, why did the Bhagavad Gita appear? It appeared because the parampara was lost and we needed to revive it. It came to Arjuna as the starting of a new parampara because Arjuna was extremely well qualified to receive this knowledge. And even though at that moment it seems as if he was lost, bewildered, and he didn't know his way, we are reminded that Arjuna is a perfect disciple, a perfect devotee. He's not bewildered, but he's put into bewilderment by Yogamaya because Krishna has to pass on this message. And he is the bearer, the pallbearer of this new information that's coming back out, start of a new parampara. So let's look at the Gita itself more closely. Now we know who said it, whom he said it to. We know the story of the Gita in the current, and we're looking at the Gita in the past. And in the past, when we look at the Gita as such, as a text, what do we see? What do we see as a Gita? Looking closely at the Gita is one next point that I'm looking at. It says the Gita is an Upanishad. We have a lot of Upanishads, but Gita is considered one of the main Upanishads because it is spoken directly by the Lord himself. The literal meaning of Upanishad is to sit near devotedly. That conjures up and brings to mind this beautiful picture of a disciple at the feet of his Guru, listening very intently and sincerely to what the Guru has to say. So Gita is an Upanishad. You come close and listen submissively, and you will grasp the meaning. The literal meaning of Upanishad is sitting near devotedly, and brings to mind the earnest disciple sincerely learning from his teacher. The word also means secret teaching, a teaching that is vouchsafed only to those who are spiritually ready to receive and profit from it. Vouchsafe, what does that mean? Vouchsafe means to guarantee as a privilege or special favor. So, this is a special privilege, having this knowledge, a teaching from which we can spiritually profit. The Bhagavad Gita is also a treatise. It's a detailed written book full of information. It is made especially for the devotee. Bhagavad Gita, there's so many ways to look at it. It is a guidebook. It's a guidebook for this world, for the people of this world. It's a guidebook for the now, it's a guidebook for the after. It will take us where we want to go. The Bhagavad Gita is a user manual. It tells you how to use this body that you have received to the best of its purposes, to get the most out of it, to use it in the best possible manner for the best possible result. The Bhagavad Gita is a roadmap for the earnest devotee, the bhakta, who is a man with a plan. The Gita is his roadmap back home. The Gita guides us. It takes us through the narrow, winding, straight, long, strong, soft path. There's no easy way out. It guides us. It takes us through all the routes that we have to take to find our way out of this crazy, chaotic material world. Srila Prabhupada explains the Gita differently. He says, the Bhagavad Gita is meant to deliver mankind from the nescience of material existence. That's a big one. The nescience of material existence. What is Prabhupada trying to tell us? Prabhupada explains as we go on in the introduction. He says, everyone's life is difficult. There are no exceptions to this statement. Nobody can say, I have no difficulty in this life. I'm perfectly fine and I don't need any help. Nobody can say that. There's always something they're struggling with, something that's challenging. The soul, who is Sat, eternal, is living in a world that is Asat, or not eternal. And that can be a very confusing proposition. And as we live here, we tend to realize that things aren't working the way we want it to work. We don't live forever. The body is not all youthful. The memory is not the way we want it to be. The things we desire, we don't always obtain. And it feels as if no matter how much happiness comes our way, distress seems to be longer and more stronger than that. And this confusion leads the intelligent human to start inquiring. Why am I in this form? What is my purpose in life? And what should I do? Atato Brahma Jignasa, the Vedanta Sutra 111, guides us to this introduction where it says, now that you're in this human form, ask, inquire. When man forgets, God descends. That is how the avatars happen. And Krishna came down to give us the Gita because man forgot. He gave it once and he's back to give it again. And he's trying to help us re-establish our connection and find the real purpose of our lives. Even though he came and he gave the Gita, not everybody's ready for it. Krishna himself explains that even though you have it and you're reading it, even though there are so many people in this material world, very few pause to do Atato Brahma Jignasa. Very few have this question. They say, what's going on? What is happening? Why am I here? And why are these problems overwhelming me like this? So when we consider that, we think about it, that, we are very fortunate to be that limited, sifted piece of sand from which we find those beautiful little shells. One of those shells that stayed back and said, hey, would like to know more. Only one in many inquire, and of them only one in many who inquire actually understand. And of them only very few will know me in truth, says Krishna. And that is true. But he doesn't deny us the opportunity to know. He just says that it's not always possible for everyone. So how do we realize the Supreme, which is ultimately the main goal of life? understanding, realizing the Supreme. Let's look at that, because that's what Srila Prabhupada goes into next in the introduction. He says, only upon hearing the instructions and observing his universal form does Arjuna appreciate the amazing nature of the Absolute. Sitting at home doing our mundane duties and living this life, it's very difficult for us to understand how amazing the Supreme is. As a normal person in a material world, I hardly have time to keep my life going, to keep myself afloat. And only when these huge calamities or challenges come hit me that I stop and say, hey, why am I not the boss? Why am I not in control? And something doesn't make sense. It took a while for Arjuna to look up at the Lord and say, oh yes, you are Bhagavan. He had to see the universal form and appreciate the amazing nature of the Absolute. He describes Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 10:12-14. He starts, Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. Could we go to that? It would be a very nice place to stop and look at that Bhagavad Gita verses. Bhagavad Gita 10:12, please. 12-14. It's a really nice set of verses because it's a beautiful description of the Supreme and all the points that are there. Thank you, Gita. Okay, so here we are. Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adi Devam Ajam Vibhu Ahustvam Rishayas Sarve Devashir Naradas Tatha Asito Devalo Vyasa Swayam Chaiva Bravishime. So he says, I recognize you, my Lord. He says, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages such as Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyasa confirm this truth about you. And now you yourself are declaring it to me. There's a question that Srila Prabhupada asks in the introduction, and he says, why is Arjuna flattering Krishna? Why is he cozying up to him and just making him feel good by saying all this stuff? And then he says, no, actually it's not. Arjuna is at a point where he actually realizes. He realizes that this is the Supreme. This is the ultimate abode, the purest, the original, the supreme enjoyer. There's a difference between flattery and realization. And he supports it by saying, it's not just me. Look at these great rishis. They have said it too, and I concur. You have shown it to me yourself, Lord, and now I truly see. So he says, I accept as true everything you say, because now I know you better. Sarvametadritam manyet yatvam vatasi keshava. No one can understand you unless they surrender unto you, because it is only through your mercy that understanding arises. It's only at a point when we realize, I'm helpless. I am not the boss of the world. I cannot even control what happens to me in the next minute. I have dreams and I have no way of making them come true. I have ideas and I don't know how to execute them in a way that makes it work for me. I have so many plans, but is it really me who's making it happen? And because these questions arise, and then we start devotional service and we start looking for the answers and we start serving the Lord. But the Lord, through his unlimited mercy and kindness, he gives us the knowledge by which we can come to him. So let's see what's going on here in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. There we are. We've not even, I don't think we've moved even the first 5 pages. Look at the amount of information that Srila Prabhupada is giving us. Srila Prabhupada is an amazing, prolific writer. He's written so many books, and just stopping for a second to think about it, this introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, I was thinking that it is a glimpse into the literary mind of a spiritual genius. Srila Prabhupada is a spiritual genius. He knew exactly what it took. He knew exactly how much to push and how much to pull and how much to pause. And when he wrote, it was not just anybody writing, it was a literary work. And to look into, to peep into the literary mind of a spiritual genius is such an amazing opportunity. And the introduction to Bhagavad Gita gives us just. So let's see what's going on. Here's Arjuna. He's explaining that he's understood more about the Supreme by finally getting to know him better. And the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Tetam satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam buddhi yogam tham yena mam upayantite. I shall give them the understanding by which they can come to me. So to read Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada says, one should show the spirit of devotion. And what is that spirit of devotion? It is the submissive spirit. The Bhagavad Gita is a great mystery. You might read the book 10 times, 20 times. But for the mystery to be revealed, you must read it with a certain attitude, a certain spirit. And only then will that spirit be the key that opens the lock. We've come all this way to the point where we've looked at the Bhagavad Gita. We've looked at where it came from, how it was published, how it reached us. We looked at how this book came to be in our hands. We looked at the origin, the cause of the book, why it started, who spoke it, to whom, in what context, what was the purpose. And from there, we start to understand a little bit about the impact it had on Arjuna, and the parampara that it unleashed, that has flown all the way down to where we are today, in the Brahma Madhava, Gaudiya Sampradaya. And we are holding this book as, fortune carriers, passed on, the torch that's been passed on to us to take forward in our hands. Let's look at the subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita as the next point to be looking at. The subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita splits up into 5 main groups or 5 truths: Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala, and Karma. Now, I don't say that I'm extremely qualified to cover these topics because they go very deep. Every one topic can be a complete series of lectures in itself because there's so much to be discussed, so much to be compared and contrasted. But as a part of the introduction, I did cover what Srila Prabhupada tells us about these. And he's pretty, his information is also concise and relevant, and it's like this crunchy little fortune cookie. It's just enough. It's sweet enough, crunchy enough, and it polishes off a meal. And in that way, he has this ability to just give you exactly what you need to know. And yet, when you go into the Gita, there's so much more. So let's see what he's told us. So Ishvara. Who is Ishvara? Ishvara is the supreme controller. He is the boss. He is the main controller. And Ishvara is full of all opulences. He is Bhagavan Swayam, right? He has all 7 opulences in all full capacity. And he is an eternal being. So why am I explaining that? Because as we go down the 5 main groups, we will realize that not all of them are eternal. But Ishvara is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the controller. He is the Sarvakarana Karanam, cause of all causes. And he is eternal, full of Satchit Ananda. What about the Jiva? The Jiva is like this minuscule portion of the Ishvara. The Jiva is the controlled living entity, and he is one of the energies of the Lord. The Lord has 2 energies. One is the superior energy, and one is the inferior energy. And the Jiva comes in the superior energy. The Achintya Veda Tattva, which we understand as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, explains to us this concept very nicely. It tells us that we are one and the same. At the same time that we are one, we are also different from the Lord. How is it that we can be one and different from the Lord simultaneously? That is the Tattva. We come from the Lord. We are minuscule parts of Him. And therefore we carry, like a drop of rain that falls from a cloud, or a drop of water from an ocean, we carry all the characteristics of that ocean, but in minuscule form. If you take a drop of water from the ocean, it will still be salty. It will still behave like water. But a drop of water cannot do what an ocean can do. So its ability to execute, its power is very, very minimal. But its characteristics are all there. So in that way, the Jiva is a part and parcel of the Supreme. The Jiva shares his tastes and qualities because we come from him. Even this desire to lord over material nature comes from the fact that the Lord is the Lord of everything that he perceives. He is, after all, the boss. And because we come from him, we carry the same flavors and characteristics. And because we come from him and he, Ishvara, is eternal, we are also eternal. But we are minuscule parts of the whole. Just like a ray of sunshine carries all the qualities of the sun, it can slightly heat up a space. It brings light. But it's not the sun. It's just a little bit of the sun. In the same way, we are minute and subordinate Ishvaras. Calling us Ishvaras doesn't make any sense because we're so small. But yet, we are a portion. Purnat Purnamudashite. We come from the whole. And therefore, even though we are complete in ourselves, we are little dot holes of the original form. So we saw Ishvara, we saw Jiva. What about Prakriti? Prakriti is called material nature, and she is an inferior energy. Prakriti is considered female to the Purusha, the male who is Ishvara. And in this combination, she's always under the control of the Ishvara. She functions under the will of the Lord, as it is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 9:10. Mayadhyakshe prakriti suyate sacharacharam. So, she functions only by the will of the Lord. And even though we look at Mother Nature and we say, wow, look at the storms, look at look at all the fires, look at the ocean and the tsunamis and everything else, we feel as if nature is in charge, right? We feel like Mother Nature's taken control. We say that sometimes. But actually, nature by itself is under the control of the Lord. She does not do anything on her own. It is from that instruction that she functions. There is always a controller, even though we do not see it. There's a controller behind everything. Just like if you open the hood of a car, there's a motor inside running. When we close it, it looks as if the car is just moving on its own power. There's no horse, there's no bullock cart, nothing's pulling it. It's just moving on its own. And we think, oh, the car can move itself. But no, inside there is a controller. In the same way, Prakriti is controlled. She's controlled by Ishwar. Another beauty of Prakriti is that Prakriti runs in cycles. So sometimes she's manifest and sometimes she's unmanifest. The material world is created, it sustains for a certain period of time, and then it is destroyed. But destruction brings creation. There is no complete end or the only one start. It's always a cycle. And because Prakriti is in a cycle, there are times when we see her manifest and times when we see her unmanifest. And that might make us think that she's temporary because it comes and goes. But Krishna explains that that's not true. Prakriti is eternal. She is in a Lord and she's always there. But because she's manifest and unmanifest, it seems to us that she's temporary, but she's not. Who is temporary then? What about Kala? Time. Is it temporary? Kala is a manifestation of the Lord in this material world. In Bhagavad Gita 11:32, Krishna says, Kalosmi lokakshaya krit pravilto. He is the manifestation. He comes as time. And in the form of time, he brings destruction. Time takes away everything. Vaishnav Maharaj likes to remind us of, I think, the story of Ozymandias and, how these great kings built these great empires and they are no longer there. Neither are they there, nor the huge monuments they built, nor the empires they sustained. Nothing lasts. Time takes away everything. And Kala is a manifestation of the Lord. Considering that, we should wonder if Ishvara is eternal, and this is a manifestation of Ishvara. Is it temporary or eternal? Kala is eternal. Eternal time. So then we have one thing left. But before we go to the fifth one, let's look at Prakriti and Jiva. Both of them are energies of the Lord. So what makes them different? We always have this question. One is the internal energy, one is the external energy. So one is the inferior energy, one is the superior energy of the Lord. Sorry. So when we look at the Jiva, when we look at the Prakriti, we have to understand that the Jiva is superior and Prakriti is inferior energy. So there is a gradation. There's also another thing to notice. The Jiva is conscious, it has consciousness, but Prakriti is unconscious. The Jiva has consciousness just like the Lord, but Prakriti does not have consciousness. The Lord has supreme consciousness, as the Lord explains to Arjuna, that Natvam Veta Parantapa. I know so much, but you don't. I know what you've been doing in your past lives. I know what everybody's been doing, but you do not even know what happened in your own past life. So there is consciousness, but there is a qualitative, huge qualitative difference between the consciousness of the Lord and the consciousness of the Jiva. So the Jiva is superior energy and Prakriti is inferior energy. The Jiva is conscious, not supremely conscious, conscious, and Prakriti is unconscious. And the third thing is, with Prakriti, Prakriti manifests herself into three qualities: goodness, passion, and ignorance. By manifesting herself into these three combinations of goodness, passion, and ignorance, she works in combination with eternal time to generate the fourth truth, which is karma. So here we have the Jiva. He interacts with Prakriti. Prakriti manifests herself into the three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And in combination with the passage of time, the Jiva, Prakriti, and Kala generate karma. Isn't that wonderful? So now we're on the fifth guy, karma. Let's see the fifth truth. Karma is basically the result of our activities. Karma arises from any activity that the living entity does. Karma can be good, karma can be bad. And karma, the beauty is that it is accruing from time immemorial. There's no point at which we can say, oh, we have like this much karma, this much. We have a basket full, a bucket load, a bushel, truck full. Since it's been accruing from time immemorial, it's very difficult for us to calculate how much, and how much of it is good, how much of it is bad, how much has already come to pass, how much is yet to come. They're very difficult to assess. But the beauty of karma is that karma is not eternal. We can burn up our karma. And as we go on further in the Gita, we get to hear more about this. When we try to understand the process of devotional service and the manner in which we can come, we can rise above the three modes and overcome our karma and get to a point where we do not get entangled in these lower modes and into all these processes where we create good karma, bad karma, and then we have to come back here to burn them off. Prabhupada moves on in the introduction to a point where he starts to talk about the Lord and the Jiva, and he discusses consciousness. He starts a paragraph saying, what is consciousness? The Lord is conscious, and the Jiva is also conscious. So, what's the difference? Prabhupada goes on to explain that the Lord's consciousness is pure consciousness. Ours is a contaminated one. In a contaminated consciousness, we start to think, our ego overwhelms us. We start to think that aham, I am the Lord. I'm the Lord of all that I survey. That's one mood in which we look at the world. Another is a mood in which we think, I am the creator. I made this. I built that. I formed this. In another way, we think, I am the enjoyer. These minerals that I found, these natural resources, these people, they are mine to exploit because, after all, I am here to enjoy. In our contaminated state of consciousness, the Jiva believes that he is the creator and he is the enjoyer. That is not true. The Jiva is neither the creator nor the enjoyer. He is simply a cooperator. Srila Prabhupada uses that word. He says he's a cooperator. Just like a part of a machine cooperates with the whole of the machine to make the machine work, just like parts of the body come together to get the food into the stomach, but only the stomach is enjoying the food. Just like when we water a tree, we water the roots, and from the roots, the whole tree receives that energy. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the enjoyer, and we are his parts and parcels. He is the central figure of creation, and the enjoyment is his, and we are cooperators in giving him that enjoyment. And I really liked what Srila Prabhupada says. He says, by cooperating, we enjoy. That's his statement. It was very nice that by cooperating, we enjoy. It's the only way we can get the benefit. We are not the root. And by watering ourselves, we're not going to get any nourishment. But by serving the Lord and by pleasing the Lord, there's much to be gained. And the Bhagavad Gita goes on to explain that in much more detail. Srila Prabhupada gives us a note there. He says, we shall find, therefore, in this Bhagavad Gita, that the complete whole is comprised of the Supreme Controller, the controlled living entities, the cosmic manifestation, eternal time, and karma or activities. And all of these are explained in this text. He's talking about the Bhagavad Gita. All of these taken completely form the complete whole. And the complete whole is called the Supreme Absolute Truth. The complete whole and the complete absolute truth are the complete personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. All manifestations are due to his different energies, and he is the complete whole. So, bringing us from the five truths to the understanding of consciousness, Prabhupada takes us into understanding of who is the Supreme. It's a beautiful flow. The Supreme Whole. There we are now. So, where do I go to next, right? It's like this book with chapters, and he just keeps taking you along for the ride. So now he takes us to the point where he says, so did you understand this, what I said? This is the Supreme, the complete whole. And what is that? These five things come together and they create this complete whole, and this complete whole is the Supreme Absolute Truth. So Srila Prabhupada explains that this Supreme Absolute Truth, this complete whole, consists of three parts. And he's explaining it in Srimad Bhagavatam 1 to 11. He says, Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advyayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. The translation is, learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. What does that mean? Does it mean that they're all the same? That Brahman is Paramatma, Paramatma is Bhagavan, because they're all the Supreme Truth? There can only be one Supreme Truth, right? I mean, if Supreme Truth were so many, then how is it the Supreme? So let's take a deeper look at this and see if they're all the same or if they're very different. Let's start with Brahman. Now, Brahman is considered like an effulgence. What is the nature of Brahman? Brahman is impersonal. Brahman is impersonal and it's all pervasive. It's like the effulgence. It's like the shining rays of the Lord. In the Ishopanishad, it says, Tattvam Pushan Apavrano Satya Dharmaya Drishtaye. The devotees are asking the Lord, Tat, that effulgence, Tvam Pushan Apavrano, Lord, remove it. So I want to see your beautiful face. I do not want to see just this glare, this shine that covers you. What purpose is that? I want to see you. And the devotees begging for the favor of the Lord to remove this Brahman effulgence so he can see what's behind it. So from that statement, we realize that there's more. Brahman is not all in all. So from that, we understand that Brahman is an incomplete realization. It is a realization, but it's a realization of only his Sat or eternal energy. Mental speculators are always trying to reach Brahman. That is their goal. And they stop there. But there is more to the Supreme than just Sat. And we will look and see what else. The Brahma Samhita says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. It explains in a later verse Yasya prabha prabhavato jagatanda koti shvashesha vasudadi vibhuti binnam tad brahma nishkalam anantam ashesha bhutam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who has great power. The impersonal Brahman is simply the glowing effulgence of his transcendental form. So from this we see that it's just a cover. We haven't really reached the person yet. So when we get to Brahman, we're only, I wouldn't even say halfway, we're only partially there. Next we have the statement, the Paramatma. What is that? When we look at the Parama Atma, the super soul, it becomes a little more personal. It's not an impersonal because he has a form. And you can feel his presence because he becomes very localized. The Paramatma resides in our heart. He's no longer this impersonal, effervescent thing. He actually exists and he's in our heart and we feel his presence. But it's not a complete realization because when he's there, we're not exactly getting to interact with him. He's just there. And I recognize he's there. I recognize he's there in me. I recognize he's there in you. I recognize he's there in the cat, the dog, the bird, the squirrel, the tree, the grass. He's there in all living beings. So I see him everywhere. But do I get to interact with him? No. The Paramatma is a little bit more personal because you feel his presence. But it's still a partial realization of Sat and Chit energies. Here, Chit energy, the knowledge part of the energy, is also present. So when you get to Paramatma, you get the Sat and Chit. But remember, we said Ishvara Parama Krishna Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha, Vigraha being form. So we've not got to the complete form. With the Paramatma, we only get about halfway. The yogi, however, considers this his ultimate goal. The yogi is always meditating on the Lord in his heart. And that's where he wants to go. But there's one more step we should go, and that is Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the supreme. How is he different, though, from the Paramatma and the Brahman? The Bhagavan gives us a very personal form. Bhagavan allows us for active reciprocation. We can interact with Bhagavan. We can communicate, we can interact, we can have activities, we can have this deep personal relationship. And that is the most fulfilling part that's missing in the first two. He is a full realization of all three energies, Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Here, Ananda being bliss. And why would you want to be without that? The goal of a bhakti yogi, a bhakta, is simply to get here, to get to this point of personal interaction with the personal form of the Lord. And that is where that statement that we said before, Satya Dharmaya Drishte, Tattvam Pushan Apahano Satya Dharmaya Drishte, becomes very important. The devotee doesn't want to see these covers. He wants to get to the source. He wants to see the Lord. So these three are all one because they all represent the absolute truth. So in that sense, they're all the same. They all represent the absolute truth. But they are realizations of the absolute truth in varying stages or degrees based on one's advancement. So that is how he says, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaneti Sabhite. They call him all these three, depending on the level in which they have realized him. But actually, all these three are in the form of Bhagavan. You get all of it when you get to the Bhagavan stage, where you actually see his form. Srila Prabhupada, from his quotes in the introduction, I'm pulling it out. I said, for instance, he says, you go through different stages in realizing the sun. In the first stage, you experience the sun's impersonal effulgence all over the sky. But that effulgence is not more important than the sun globe, because it is from the sun globe that the effulgence is coming. So why would you settle there? Anyone would understand. This sunshine is not as important as the sun globe. And if you approach the sun globe and penetrate into the sun, if you really have that scientific power to go within the sun globe, then you'll find out that there is a sun god. And isn't that so much better? So would you like to stay in the sunshine? Would you like to experience the sun globe? Or would you like to meet the person who runs it all? This is the information we can gather when we read Bhagavad Gita, says Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada talks about something else along the way. He says, so I've given you all this information. This is what you're going to find in the Gita, and there's more to come. He talks about a lot of things. But he says, well, I've given you all this information, and I'm telling you that this is a good scripture. It's coming from this place. It's all good. But there's this doubt. The mind plays tricks, and working with the mind is tricky business. The mind says, why should I believe you? Why should I believe in these scriptures? And Prabhupada answers it because he knows that out of 5 people who open the book, there'll be at least 3 who ask, so how do I trust you, right? Building trust. And Prabhupada explains, when the question comes, why should I believe what's in the scriptures? He says, Vedic knowledge is infallible. It may be contradictory at times, but the contradictions are resolvable by appropriate modifications based on time, place, and circumstance. What holds true in a certain time may not hold true at another, and because of that, contradictions may exist, but that does not mean that Vedic knowledge is wrong. A perfect example of this is cow dung. Cow dung is the stool of an animal, and the stool of an animal is considered contaminated. But the Shastras tell us that cow dung is purifying. How can 2 things be true? They can, because, as scientists have recently discovered, cow dung has antiseptic properties. It has the ability to, antiseptic means to remove harmful bacteria and create a more clean environment for the skin or any place that you apply it on. And we use it in our Vedic scriptures, in our Vedic yogas. Like we do the havan, the pujas, we use cow dung, we dry it and we use it as fuel because it's so pure. Our knowledge, the knowledge we grew up with, the knowledge we hold to be very dear to us in this material world is very different. We have created it by researching and digging further, deeper, trying to find answers. But you cannot research and find answers through Vedic knowledge. You cannot go there and say, I'll prove this. Vedic knowledge doesn't comply to our rules. And Prabhupada says, it's because you are faulty. I'm like, why am I faulty? I'm working really hard. I'm a normal, above average intelligence person. I can do this. And he says, no, you're just faulty. You're faulty as a human being. Because as a human being, you are inherently built with 4 flaws. And what are those 4 flaws? This is the first time I've ever heard of these 4 flaws in the Gita. I never knew I was this faulty, but it's very, very true. He says, what are the 4 defects? The 4 defects, and therefore, what makes us faulty? And therefore, from there, what makes the knowledge we acquire faulty is that, 1, we commit mistakes. Even the greatest leaders of our times make mistakes. They're not able to make the right decision, right judgment at every point. And that's how some of them get assassinated, and then die of some other issue. There's a war, they don't win. So many mistakes, which when you look back, hindsight is 2020. But when you look back, you think, oh, could have done that differently. But they don't, because as humans, we commit mistakes. It's a natural propensity. The second one is that Prabhupada says, we are illusioned. We think this world was made for us. We think that, we are the doers, we are the enjoyers. We think that we are this body. How illusioned are we? Not for 2 seconds in a day are we able to forget this illusion that we are this body. Anytime, anywhere, all you have to do is pinch me and I'll be, oh! Why did you touch me? Forgetting that the person only touched the body. So really, when you think about it, we are so illusioned. And if you don't want to go that way and you want to just say, oh, okay, illusioned, think about the way we are not able to see things. We go in a desert, we walk for some time. We see a mirage. It happens naturally. A hot day on a road. We see water where there's nothing. How is that even possible? Because we are very easily illusioned. The third point Srila Prabhupada says is that we have a tendency to cheat. Now, I couldn't figure out what was the cause for this tendency to cheat, except that we were not perfect. And we try to cover that up and act like we are, and that is why we cheat. But there is a tendency to cheat. There's always this nobody will ever know. Why don't I just, you know? It is there. Of course it's there, and I realize it. But it's a little more difficult to point it out. The fourth thing that Srila Prabhupada says is very pretty obvious, is that we have imperfect senses. Our eyes can only see light within a certain spectrum. Our ears can hear sound only within certain decibels. We can only travel by ourselves with this body to a certain extent. We can only take certain amount of heat and cold. The skin cannot take more. With all these limitations, Prabhupada asks, how can you find perfect knowledge? How can you be the givers of perfect knowledge? But look at the Gita. The Gita is given by the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita is perfect knowledge because it is coming from a perfect source, Krishna, and it is coming through the proper channel of the parampara. The Lord's words and hymn are non-different. We have learned that over time. The Lord, his words, his paraphernalia, his activities, they're all one and the same because everything is absolute in the spiritual world. And when he speaks the Bhagavad Gita, his words are not our words. Our words are human words. Our speech is flawed. It is covered by these four tendencies that we have. But his words are aparushaya. They're not like a human speech. And we should accept the words of the Bhagavad Gita as they are because they come from him. Srila Prabhupada says, we have no right to interpret it. No reason to delete, add, or modify it in any way. He says the Bhagavad Gita should be accepted without any whimsical participation on the reader's part. It shouldn't be that we choose to read a certain part, we choose to interpret it in combination with something else, and we make the Gita something that it's not. Only when we honor it the way we should and read it the way it is, will the Gita reveal to us its secrets. The Gita, says Srila Prabhupada, is the most perfect presentation of Vedic knowledge, received from the transcendental source, from the Lord himself, and we are receiving it from a valid disciplic succession. So we must accept it completely without doubt. Srila Prabhupada worked tirelessly to get us this book. He made it his job to get us started and find our way back home, back to Godhead. And this book, in so many ways, has been a culmination of so many years of his hard work. When we look back on what we've read over this period of time, we've come only to like a halfway into the introduction at this point. But we have been able to see that Srila Prabhupada has had so many reasons to stay focused on bringing this book to us. Without this opportunity, we would never have got this ticket to board the bus on our spiritual journey back home. Not only did Srila Prabhupada take a lot of personal effort and risk in bringing this to us, he also took a lot of physical strain. He wouldn't sleep. He had very short sleep times. He would travel around the world trying to set up new centers and help his disciples. And between it all, he did not just the Gita, but so many books. The Bhagavad Gita is like a ticket. And Srila Prabhupada has set shuttles all over the world for us to get on and go back home, back to Godhead. Now that we have this ticket, should we not board the bus and find our way home? I think that would be our service to Srila Prabhupada. Now that we have the ticket, let's catch that bus and start our journey back home. Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. This was my presentation. I don't think I planned the time quite as much, so I have a little extra time to go on. If anybody has anything to share, and I would really be grateful to learn from you. If you have any points that you want to share on this, it would be wonderful. Shamrupa Prabhu.
Mataji.
Hi, Krishna Mataji.
Sorry, Shamrupa Prabhu, is that okay?
No, go ahead, Mataji.
Okay. So, wonderful class, Manjulakantha, and I really felt like the flow was so nice. It really gave me a reintroduction to Bhagavad Gita, and I really enjoyed it. And the points that you made and the examples that you gave are so relevant. And thank you very much. I think you should speak more and enlighten us more. Yeah, especially the The way in which you connected the five truths in Bhagavad Gita, it's um, it's very appropriate and it just sticks.
Actually, it's just Prabhupada, Mataji.
Yeah,
When
but
I first did,
it's
yeah,
just giving it in a nice way that we can digest. So that makes it all easy.
very true.
Nice.
I
Thank
was
you.
thinking,
Thank you.
thank you, Mataji.
Hare
I was
Krishna.
thinking when I was doing this service that, I
Uh,
don't know if everybody has read, there's a chicken soup for the soul. It's a very famous, a lot of people have it. I'm sorry to talk about chicken on this website at this point, but it's relevant because of the nature of the book. They started with
uh,
chicken soup for the soul, and then they created chicken soup for the married soul, the chicken soup for the teen soul, the chicken soup for the this and the chicken soup for that. And I was thinking that this is a book for all souls. You don't need to
yes.
create a Bhagavad Gita for the teenagers,
Hmm.
Bhagavad Gita for the elderly, a Bhagavad Gita for the married, a Bhagavad Gita for the brahmacharis. My son, who's 10 years old, reads the Gita. My daughter, who's 18, reads the Gita. I'm 70 plus. I'm reading the Gita. And my parents listen to it. The Gita has no age cutoff. It doesn't require us to have any special qualifications as such. It's just open to anybody who wants it. As long as you have that attitude, submissive, willing attitude, the Gita opens up to you. And it's such a wonderful.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Shamrupa Prabhu, can you give us some anything that you have? I would love to hear your add on.
Mataji, actually, I was so mesmerized by your wonderful presentation. Actually, it is so, that everything is spoken. In a nutshell, you spoke the whole Bhagavad Gita and you presented Srila Prabhupada. It was really a pleasure. I was just remembering that the devotees who give this nice presentation, uh, all you have to do is just receive it, like in the translation of
Mm-hmm.
Nashta Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Seva. So in there, Prabhupada is writing in the translation. That's why Prabhupada's translation is so very important, and it gives extra flavor. So he writes by regular attendance to the Bhagavatam class. So that time I was thinking that if I just carefully hear these Bhagavad Gita classes and the Saturday Sunday classes, so much we can just get. Just like you made such a nice presentation, it's almost it is exactly like cooking a wonderful feast and offering. You just cook a feast with so many variety of items in that, and all we have to do is just oral reception, and then all our abhadra will go away. Actually, your presentation again rejuvenated. It really inspired me to take Bhagavad Gita more seriously. How you presented, and I was really thinking that how you mentioned that point that Prabhupada he published his Bhagavad Gita. It was stolen, and again he rewrote. In fact, this Bhagavad Gita came in the fourth attempt actually, this as it is thing published. So first time when he wrote, I've never heard anybody taking four attempts to publish the Gita. And here, and no wonder why it is so popular. First attempt was, that Gita's manuscript got sold for a tea. That was Prabhupada left.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
That was first attempt. Second attempt was in US. His manuscript got stolen.
So yes.
Third attempt was Macmillan published, but not the full version, but they cut
Mm.
so many. And then the fourth attempt, Prabhupada was so happy that he could finally give, what he had to give. And it is so wonderful when a devotee, like you're telling that Arjuna, Krishna revealed the secrets of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, and you mentioned the qualifications that he was a devotee, Shakha, Bhakta, Sakha,
Yes.
and also disciple. That is so nicely you presented the qualification, and it actually inspires me to think that whether I can evaluate myself. Am I, cultivating these three qualities to understand Bhagavad Gita, and then really bring about a change in my life. And you so beautifully mentioned that it is like a key which can open the treasure house actually. Uh, that is so wonderful. But unless we develop these three qualifications, then then the mystery remains. You may rightly mention that this is like a mystery. The mystery doesn't open before us unless we develop these qualities. So today I really felt the wonderful way you presented the Bhagavad Gita. It's really very touching, and it really inspired me to take Bhagavad Gita more seriously and make our life successful. We can look at the Gita, we can read the Gita you just mentioned, we can even speak on that, but we may not be able to transform ourselves unless we develop these three qualifications. Unless we develop these three qualifications, the secret won't be revealed to us. It still remains far away. We really want to uh, as you said, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. That was so wonderful actually. That we really want to ultimately know Krishna. The purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to become a devotee, not anything else. That we really want to know Krishna in our life through reading Bhagavad Gita, through chanting, and through developing that love that mentioned, that bhakta and sakha, that naturally, the relationship. If that part is missing, then it happens like in a mechanical thing. It's like a lot of struggle. But
Just Attaha.
if the lubricant of love is there, then
Ah, nice.
just like a mother, when he takes care of the child, she doesn't feel it's a big struggle, but she does much more austerity than anybody else. Similarly, whether it is chanting or reading Bhagavad Gita, unless we develop these three qualifications and qualify ourselves, everything remains such a big struggle actually. So I really again want to thank you for this really wonderful presentation. So sweet. I'm really mesmerized, and it so inspiring. And always, it's important to come to the basics, because we can build a very big palace, but if the basic is weak, it's just a matter of time when it's going to collapse. So, coming to this Bhagavad Gita, reviewing the basic teachings, taking inspiration, helps us to make the foundation very solid on which our castle of spiritual life can grow. So, thank you again to really bring us to the basics, clear it up, and so sweet that we can really take interest. Wonderful, Mataji. Thank you. I'm really so grateful to you.
Actually, we only covered like half of it. And I was very disappointed that I didn't make it all the way because I already had 10 pages of notes. I was like, okay, that should be enough. But there's another part too where we can finish it up. And then there's the Gita Mahatmya, which we couldn't touch. And Prabhupada, if it must be so important if Prabhupada brought it into the introduction to explain to the reader it's not just the benefit of reading Krishna's words, there's so much more to the Gita. So many other benefits you can derive from just saying it. And that's something I wanted to cover maybe next time when I get a chance to cover from here into the Gita Mahatmya. But it's just, I was thinking that Srila Prabhupada was saying, right, that at one point he says, so you may preach to many people, but how much can you do? But you give my book and they read the book, they read one page, they read one paragraph. Nay, they read one word and it will change their lives. And Prabhupada had this very deep conviction about the Bhagavad Gita because when we go back and look, Prabhupada himself kept reading the Gita. So do you think that this is just for you? It's for everyone. And he used to read it himself. If it was just his Gita, he wouldn't have to read it. If he had written it like any other book somebody else had read, there would be no need for him to go back and read it. But he meticulously used to read it. And that really is, for me, the most shining example of the fact that this is such a spiritual text. It's an inspired work that he has done. So something we should keep in our heart, the fact that our Acharya himself read the book. So how important it is for us to be reading it. So good. Niharika, anything you really liked?
The last part when you said that just reading the Bhagavad Gita, even if it's just to do a service to Srila Prabhupada, because he did so much, like this whole painstaking process. And that really inspired me to read the Bhagavad Gita. because I was like thinking about it for a while, but I never like actually got to it. And I was hoping in like Karthik I would like get the time to read. So now I'm like really like jolted to read it now. So thank you so much, Mataji, for the wonderful class.
You're very welcome. Actually, Niharika, when I first started reading the Gita, my only approach, because I was already married, I had a kid, I'm not like you guys. I came a little late. Krishna kept me a little longer on the gas. So he decided, okay, let's see if it will work. And when I got to the Gita, my whole focus was to read the Gita, because all my life I've waited to find out what is his Gita. A Christian knows his Bible. A Mohammedan knows his Quran. But a Hindu doesn't know his Gita. And I used to inquire. The Gita used to be printed everywhere in Hindi, Sanskrit. It used to be on calendars. It used to be here. It used to be there. But we didn't keep the text. And I have never seen the text. And it never struck me to go into a shop and ask them for the Gita. It never struck me that the Gita was so easily available. I thought Gita is a spiritual text. It's wrapped in a cloth, kept in a house. It must be handed over from generation to generation. We don't seem to have it. And even when I asked people, my mom would put me in a class for Gita recitation. We used to go sit there just for the prasadam at the end of the class, so we could enjoy that little sweet. That's the only way I survived that 1 hour of recitation, because we couldn't understand. And here is Srila Prabhupada. When you open his book, the first time I was just grateful I read it. I was in tears when I sat in front of the deities and I said, because we had come for our Bhakti Shastri exam, I looked at the deities and I said, I did it. I read the Gita. So that's where I started, just to be able to read the Gita. And then over the years, as Vaisheshika Maharaj keeps doing these lectures and classes with us, and then when I kept reading the Gita over time, at some point, Srila Prabhupada manifests, because you can actually, you can hear Prabhupada in his Gita. And that's a beautiful moment when you've really invested time and you've sat with the Gita and Srila Prabhupada's right there. You can actually take it from him. You're there in the Upanishad, close, hearing carefully. That's so nice. And then after a point, you'll get to a stage where when you hear the words, like when Krishna is telling him, how did this enter you? These problems, how did these qualities come into you? They're not yours. And then he says, and there are the points when you read a Sanskrit and then, like when he says, you bring the chariots up, Krishna brings the chariots and parks it there. Ratham sthapaya me Arjuna, Achyuta. And then he parks it there. And then you can actually imagine the scene with all these horses and all these brave, strong men. And there's Arjuna. You have to be able to put yourself into the story. The Gita becomes so much more relevant when you travel in space and time to the place where it's happening. And then you actually see this whole thing, happening. It's amazing. I wish for everybody that kind of imagery, because it just makes the Bhagavad Gita so much more relevant. It's not just like, I gave you a Gita. Maharaj says in one of his very old lectures, he says, think that these are your deities. Imagine you picked up your deities from your altar and you gave them. I would never give my deities. But every time he says, because Krishna is absolute, when you're giving this Gita to someone, it is the supreme gift. It's like you're giving them your deities. You're giving them Krishna. And it was very shocking for me to hear that. It was a very old lecture of his that we got somewhere. And I was thinking, wow, he was so young then. But look at it's so nice to hear everybody's perspective on the Gita. It's just so nice. Mataji, can we stop here, or do we have, I think we have 5 more minutes.
Mataji, Manjulakantha Mataji, this is Ashray
Yes,
Maharaj. So we have
yes, true.
Hari Bol. I am not in a very good shape. That's why I'm not in video. I'm sorry about that. So I'm just so there is a question on the Zoom chat from Sugopi Somya Mataji. The one question I have is please go ahead.
Yes. The one question I have is, despite such a clear introduction provided by Srila Prabhupada, what motivates one to read further versus stop at the introduction and not pursue it? Does this tie back to the need to be blessed with Krishna's and a pure devotee's mercy in a certain life? I'm assuming that the person who read the introduction. So there are a lot of things to consider in this statement of yours. So if you're like me, a very avid book reader, You will not read the introduction. You will read the blurb in the back to find out what the book is about. And then if the blurb suits your fancy, then you'll flip through a few pages in the center, and then you'll decide whether you'll buy the book or not. A person who has invested his time and energy to read the introduction is usually a very avid reader, which means he's going from page to page to page. Such a person usually, when he finds something of interest, would like to know more. So they will go into the book to read. Now, this is just a material understanding of a reader. But when we look at Srila Prabhupada's book and you ask me, well, you've already explained the Gita so nicely with the introduction, why would I read more? It's like saying, there's a new movie out in town and this is the trailer. And you watch this trailer and it's all hyped up. It's got all this, and you get a sense of where the story is going, right? There's these two cops, they're arguing, there's a fight, they need to solve the crime. You got the storyline. Why do you want to watch the movie? Because it's going to be so much better. If the trailer is this good, imagine how the movie is going to be. That's how they sell it, right? That's how they move it. And that's how Prabhupada is selling you the Gita. He says, this is my introduction. If I could get so much from the book, what do you think you're going to get? So that's how we approach the book. If you really like the introduction and you liked what it has to say, then you will also understand that this is just about 23 pages, and there are around 700 pages inside. So there's so much more we need to know. And this is a manual for our life. Imagine buying something without a manual. If you bought a table and you didn't know how to fix it and set it up, what are you going to do? You will try to do it in different ways and most probably break something in the process because you didn't have the manual. You might have a television set and it came without a manual and has all these wires and plugs and everything. You would never accept a product if it didn't have a manual, but we have been given this body and we refuse to accept the manual. And Krishna came back. He returned to make sure that everybody has the manual so that you can use this body, this mind, and this everything that's given to you in the best possible way. And how foolish would be materialistic people that we are, how foolish would it be for us to say, I don't need the manual, I'll just get this done. I'm here to enjoy. Let me enjoy as much as I can. And then who cares? When I die, I die. We hear that so many times. And you come up to somebody with a book and they'll say, why would I take this book? I said, because it's your manual. It tells you the purpose of your life. It tells you how to fix it so that you run well. It tells you the right way to do stuff, the better way to do stuff, and the best way to live. Why would you not want it? Doesn't make any material sense. Forget spiritual, right? So I really think that if you like the introduction, please don't hesitate. Master Chaha, go ahead and read the book because it's a really good read. It's a lifetime of reading. It keeps coming back like waves in the ocean. It's like sitting at the ocean and watching the waves. It keeps coming back. So as you read the Gita, the longer you read the Gita, the more you focus on Prabhupada's explanations when you're reading it, because Sanskrit is just Sanskrit. Prabhupada makes it easier for you. So when you read the explanations, it's like you get realizations wave after wave. It's a wonderful experience. It's a lifetime of learning.
Mataji, I was just reminded of that statement of Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita where the spirit of the reader is also given is that more you tell me, the more I want to hear about you. So that sweetness, you're able to taste that sweetness of the Lord's words. So
that's so important. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
I think we can stop there. Are we good? Okay, so then thank you so much for tolerating me. Thank you so much for coming and listening and giving me this encouragement. It was such a pleasure to be here today. I really like doing this because it brings me so much closer to Prabhupada. That's what we all want, right? To get closer to the Acharya. So I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity. Please forgive me if I have made any offenses, if I have inadvertently quoted a wrong scripture or made a wrong comment. Please forgive me and correct me. Thank you so much for your love and appreciation. Hare Krishna.
Madhuri, there is a reflection by Giridhar Prabhu in the chat.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I very much like that point. Yes, Prabhu.
Before that.
I was thinking complying with the Lord must be, I was thinking complying with the Lord must be a very lonely activity. Simply following the difficult commands of the scriptures. But when you mentioned that Srila Prabhupada called us co-operators, Mataji, I realized that we are co-operators. That Krishna also begins to operate on us, and we are not left alone to do what we must do. Yes. When you feel his presence, when you feel his hand in your life, and in many moments in time, I have had that opportunity to feel his hand. I truly felt like he was there. In moments of great difficulty, moments of great turmoil, when you feel that strength of his hand, then this thought that you're alone won't arise. You are never alone in devotional service, because devotional service is very difficult to do without association. So a lot of times devotional service, like Prabhu says, it's the lubricant of love. And that lubricant of love is so easily available when you're with devotees. They're generous with their lubricant. Not only will they oil their machine, they'll oil yours also. This is a free for you, free buffet. You need some extra energy for your Krishna consciousness, just go meet devotees. They carry Krishna in their hearts. So tirtha kurvanti tirthani, especially the senior devotees, the pure devotees, pure souls. They bring the Lord with them wherever they go. So one is association and the other is realization of the Lord. The moments in life when you feel his presence, his hand over your head, him pulling you back, those moments are the most precious moments, because they are the moments when your faith uh, goes from abstract to concrete. Those are the moments you build on. When we say, I have faith, it's not just that I believe. It's not just that I have Guru and he instructed me and on complete surrender. Surrender also needs to have realization. How do I surrender to something I can't connect with, right? So Krishna comes, he'll come. If you call him, he'll come. He's always there. He's been there lifetimes, but we've never turned around to look at him. So if we just call him, he's waiting to come. And it's the truth. Any of us senior devotees, any of the devotees in Krishna consciousness will agree to that he comes. So you're never alone. Actually, I had a realization when I went to distribute books. I was alone and I had these books and I had gone to a Tamil, some celebration, Diwali celebration, something, and nobody was there. So I took the books, I took my car and I went down alone. And I was standing at the entrance with these books and it was really an uncomfortable situation. Nobody likes to go alone to book distribution and to a new place. But somebody had to go, so I thought, okay, I should try this. And I was standing there and I was thinking that when you distribute books, you're never alone. The Lord is in your heart. The instructions of your spiritual master are in your mind. And Srila Prabhupada is right in your hand. When you have 3 people with you, how can you be alone? You're always taken care of. So when you go out to do books, you're never alone. Actually, you're getting some private time with the most important people in your life. So it's actually a good place to be. I hope that helps. Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu, so nice to see you. Hi, Paul.
I was just listening, sorry I joined late. I was just realizing that whatever you were saying, you're a living embodiment of that. So amazing. And everything that you did, including your hand gestures and your smile and the way you exude confidence in what you said, I was almost on the verge of saying, this looks so true and so unbelievable, just on theory. I hope I can hold Krishna accountable for, and Manjulakantha Manta said it, now you have to do it.
Oh, Krishna. He has so many like me out there selling him.
Probably true, but I have yet to find one. So you Mataji.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Arges Manjulakantha Mataji ki
Jai.
Yeah.
Evergreen Mataji ki jai.
Hi, Mataji.
Thanks.
So nice to see you.
Nice lecture.
Thank you for coming, Mataji.
Yeah.
Mataji, I just
Okay.
agree with Prabhu. Your enthusiasm really rubs off. So,
Actually, I did really enjoy reading books. I always regret when a service like this ends, because when it does come, it's very stressful. And when you start preparing, you're not quite sure if you'll make it. After the 5th page, you're not sure what you put in the first page, right? It gets overwhelming. But the very fact that you're spending so much time with Prabhupada, it's like squeezing an orange and taking the juice. And these are those moments when you get that the recharge is really strong. You're plugged into a nice, very high voltage wire when you do these services. So that's why I really want to like take it, no matter how challenging it is. So Giridhar, are we done?
So Mataji, just one final reflection. I forgot, because otherwise the Koladeep Prabhu will prepare anything bad. So it's actually repeated many times, but I will still read it what he has given. Beautiful presentation of the fundamentals, Mataji. Every devotee should remember all the points you mentioned in the discourse to avoid confusion on the foundational subject matters. Jai.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much that you listened. I was like, because I only see the Zooms. I don't know how many people I have troubled outside in Facebook as well. But it's such a pleasure to see all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna.
Mataji, then we can end the live stream.
Prabhu, you'll have to switch the recording. It's still running live.
Yes, Mataji, can I end the live stream?
Yes, please.